Considering how popular crossovers are these days, it is crazy to me that more of them aren't hybrids. Just look at the compact segment. There are only a couple to choose from, including this new Escape. But that's not the only reason it stands out, with the right blend of efficiency, versatility, and value to make it worth checking out. The compact crossover segment is about the biggest around right now, and it's pretty disappointing that so few brands are building hybrids. If you take away the 2 or 3 plugins you can buy, there's only this thing and the Toyota RAV4 available in Canada. That's it. And I know you might be thinking it's probably pretty easy to look good in a segment of 2, but man, this new Escape hybrid is very impressive. Just like the RAV4, it uses a 2.5-liter gas engine that runs on a modern version of the Atkinson cycle. Instead of actually using a longer expansion stroke like they did in the old days, the valve timing has been modified to keep the intake valves open for longer. The downside to an engine like this is that power density isn't as high as a regular 4-stroke, but the trade-off is this thing is extremely efficient and it needs less energy to do its thing. Essentially, keeping the intake valves open longer means it doesn't have to work as hard to move the pistons. And besides, there's an electric motor that makes up for the output that it's missing at the low end. Now, this gas engine on its own makes 165 horsepower and 155 pound-feet of torque, so about the same as the 2.4-liter engine in the Mitsubishi Outlander. Yikes. Whether you're talking about a hybrid or not, that is pretty low by today's standards, but don't forget there's that 88 kilowatt electric motor along for the ride, as well as a lithium-ion battery pack under the back seats. Now, net system output is 200 horsepower, so that's less than the RAV4 hybrid, but it's more than enough to motivate this thing. And I'll tell you one thing, it actually feels pretty peppy. There's just a responsiveness kind of in its back pocket, so if you need to pass someone, you can actually do it and you don't feel like it's struggling. And I'm not talking just when you put it in sport mode, but even in eco mode, this thing is really responsive. And that's really the only time you're going to notice the engine buzzing, that or when you're at idle. It can be pretty clattery when you're just sitting there, but when you're out cruising around, it's pretty silent and there's a great amount of sound deadening too. Toyota's hybrid powertrain is very smooth when it switches back and forth between gas and electric propulsion, but this thing is on another level and you can barely tell anything is happening. And that's exactly the way a hybrid like this should be. Now, like I said, there are a few different drive modes that change things up quite a bit. If you have it in sport mode, it is going to prioritize the gas engine, whereas if it's set in eco mode, it's going to prioritize the electric motor. But either way, it is very smooth and quiet. It's very serene, and that's what I love about this thing. Just like most hybrids, this thing uses a continuously variable transmission, but it's not a penalty in any way, and there's none of that rubber banding that's common to these transmissions. And really, this powertrain is the highlight of the Escape hybrid. Now, it's only available in one trim in Canada, and that's the fully loaded titanium, but unlike gas-powered titanium models, this thing doesn't have standard all-wheel drive. To get that, you're gonna pay $1,500 more. And that's also a way this thing differs from the RAV4, because every RAV4 sold in Canada comes with all-wheel drive. The systems are also different themselves because that one is an electric all-wheel drive system. There's an electric motor in the back that drives the rear wheels, and it's completely independent from the rest of the powertrain. Whereas this one uses the conventional mechanical all-wheel drive system you can get in the gas-powered Escape as well. But really, you're not going to notice any difference between the two in everyday driving. Ford's regenerative brakes are also a lot different than Toyota's, and if you drive one of that brand's heavier hybrids like the RAV4 or the Highlander, you'll notice that the brakes are pretty soft, whereas these ones bite really hard off the top before becoming progressive like conventional brakes. There's nothing wrong with them, and they actually put quite a bit of energy back into the battery, but they do take some getting used to, and there's no way to adjust them like you can in some other electrified rides. When it comes to the drive experience, Ford deserves a lot of credit for the gamification of this thing, and that's a big plus in a hybrid or electric car. It just makes the drive that much more engaging, and this thing has it nailed. For starters, there's a really cool brake coach function, and you can turn it off, but I'd highly recommend leaving it on. Because what it does is it gives you a score here in the digital gauge cluster every time you bring the Escape to a stop to tell you how much power you've recovered. And it's just very cool, and it's a nice way to challenge yourself on your daily drive to see how close to 100% you can get every time you come to a stop. It is very cool. There's also some different displays you can pull up here on the main infotainment screen, so you can keep an eye on energy flow and stuff like that. But again, it's just a cool way to stay engaged with this vehicle, and I like it a lot. The way the trip computer is set up, it also tells you how many kilometers you've driven on electricity alone, which is very cool. And if the numbers I'm seeing here are accurate, I've driven almost 40% of the time this week on nothing but electrons. When you consider that there's no dedicated electric driving range in this thing, that is very impressive. And again, it's just one more way to challenge yourself on your daily drive to be as efficient as possible. If you're buying a hybrid, that's what it's all about, so you may as well try your hardest. But again, you don't have to drive it like you're trying hard, and this thing is very natural in that way. You can drive very efficiently without feeling like you're hypermiling it. So if we're talking about the results of my own driving behavior, I've been averaging right around 5.5 liters per 100 kilometers this week, which is really impressive, and it's right up there with that Toyota Camry Hybrid that I reviewed with Jody a few weeks back, with the added bonus of all this extra room behind me. That's really impressive. And speaking of that Camry video, you know the drill. If you're not subscribed yet, make sure you hit that button below and check out all the latest content from autoTRADER.ca. Now, again, if you watch my comparison I did between the Escape, the RAV4, the Honda CR-V, and the Mazda CX-5 not too long ago, you'll know that this thing is somewhere in between all of those. There's not quite as much room inside as you get with the CR-V or the RAV4, but there's more than the CX-5, and I do think there's more than enough in here for a family of 4. There's also some cool tricks up its sleeve, like a rear seat that's on rails, so you can slide it forward if you need more cargo room, or back if you need more leg room for passengers in the back seat. I can also sit behind myself with the driver's seat in my normal seating position, which is awesome considering I'm a little bit taller than 6'3". To have all that room in the second row is a huge bonus. Whether you're moving adults or kids, it's nice to have that space to stretch out. Since the Escape Hybrid is based on the top-of-the-line titanium trim, you get a power tailgate that you can open with your foot, which comes in handy when your hands are full. Now, Ford says there's about 870 liters back here, so a couple hundred less than the RAV4, but honestly, there should be more than enough space for the type of stuff you're gonna haul around with this thing. In terms of features, this thing is pretty decked out too. There's leather upholstery that feels pretty nice, heated front seats, a heated steering wheel, a 10-speaker stereo. There's even a self-parking system. Though, here's a curiosity for you. Ford Canada's website says there's a wireless phone charger down here in this console cubby, but when I drop my phone into there, nothing happens. And when I lifted up the mat, there's nothing to indicate that there actually is a wireless charger there. I reached out to Ford Canada and haven't heard anything back yet, but when I do, I'll be sure to let you guys know exactly what's going on here. Okay, so I got an update from Ford on that wireless charging pad situation. Apparently Escapes built early in the production run don't have the feature, but ones built later on do. So if yours was built before about June, you're not gonna have the wireless charging pad down in that console cubby, but if yours was built after that, you will have it. I don't know about you, but I'd still be pretty disappointed if I bought one not knowing it was built early on, but maybe that's just me. So there's your scoop from Ford. There's also a Wi-Fi hotspot in here, this 8-inch touchscreen, and standard Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But one thing that's really beginning to bug me about Ford products is the propensity for them to kick you off of those connections for no reason at all. I'm running the latest version of iOS and I have my phone plugged in with an Apple branded cable, but it still refuses to connect. And the same thing happened to Jody last week when we did that Mustang comparison, and she has Android Auto. I've noticed it in this thing, the Mustang, the Expedition I reviewed, as well as the Ranger. It is a big problem and it's an annoyance more than anything, but that to me is a big problem. Something that's supposed to connect and seamlessly connect you with your life when you're behind the wheel, when that doesn't work, it can be a big issue. In terms of other standard equipment, there's all kinds of advanced safety features. You've got lane keep assist, automatic forward emergency braking, blind spot monitoring, and adaptive cruise control. Now, I do like the lane keep assist system, but I'm not crazy about the lane centering assist you get in this latest version of the Escape. It's pretty easy to shut it off and you just use this button here on the steering wheel, but I don't like it at all because it really fights to do what it wants to do instead of let you do your thing. Let's say you're cruising along and there's a big truck coming towards you. If you want to give it as much room as possible, like I like to do, and you move over towards the shoulder, the car is going to wrestle with you and fight to move you back into the center of the lane. I understand that it knows what it's doing, but that to me is very unnerving, and I like to be in control. You shouldn't be taking that control away from the driver, so I ended up shutting it off. The only other weird thing about this Escape to me is the fact that you can't get ventilated front seats at all, not even in this top titanium trim, and that is very weird considering this thing is basically brand new. And the same goes with heated rear seats. And when you consider the fact that both of those features are offered in the top trim of the RAV4, well, that's a pretty easy sell if those features matter to you. When it comes to options, there really aren't many. There's that all-wheel drive I mentioned earlier, as well as one package that groups together this flimsy head-up display unit, an extra power outlet, and this panoramic sunroof. And if seeing the sky is important to you, then I say go for it, but I'd personally skip it and save the $2,350 it costs, because really the price of this thing is one of its biggest selling points. The cheapest version of this will set you back just under 37 grand before freight, fees, and taxes, and that's for a front-wheel drive model, so add $1,500 to get yourself all-wheel drive. But that means $38,150, which is 6 grand more than the cheapest version of the RAV4 Hybrid, but you're getting way more stuff in here. Now, obviously, this better aligns with the RAV4 Limited that sits at the top of that trim ladder, but if you think about it, sure, it has those climate-controlled seats, but some stuff it doesn't have include this Wi-Fi hotspot, and if you add that package, a head-up display system, which isn't available in the RAV4, and that thing will set you back 43 grand. So you're saving yourself more than 2 grand with this and getting all kinds of great features. Now, I know the RAV4 is way roomier, but it doesn't drive anywhere near as nice as this thing does. I know this really isn't a comparison, but when you consider there are only 2 on the market, it really comes down to that thing or this. You can't go wrong either way, but I would say your best bet is to drive them both and see which suits you better. But really, I do think you're going to find this Escape Hybrid makes a compelling case. It handles well, ride quality is nice, and it's got a perky powertrain that's incredibly efficient. To recap, I like the smooth and seamless hybrid powertrain, the outstanding fuel efficiency, and the way the Escape Hybrid's drive experience has been gamified. I don't like that it doesn't come with ventilated front seats or heated rear seats, the lane centering assist, or how touchy the brakes are off the top. There's no denying the serious strides that have been made with this 4th gen Escape, and the hybrid version really is the best of the bunch. There's no real adjustment to driving it, and you'll appreciate the silky smooth hybrid powertrain and excellent fuel efficiency. But the best part is, you don't have to sacrifice space in order to burn less gas than a subcompact city car.